Welcome to the Greatness Together podcast. Curious minds unite. Mother-daughter conversations that delve into the heart of psychology. Thanks for joining us. I think our listeners and viewers who know me will not be surprised to know that I have an extroverted preference.
Yeah, it's your job. It's your job. You talk to people and talk on front of stages, which I would rather do things I can't say on this podcast than do that.
Wow. Now everyone's going to want to know what those things are. You're going to have to just take a guess, I guess. 'Cause we're not going to tell you.
Yeah.
I actually don't want to know as your mother.
So
yeah.
those are just my introversion tendencies. I'd much rather be in bed all night than interact.
Yeah. Well, and so let's define introversion extroversion, because what's really, you and I are clear on it because this is a big thing that we always cover in psychology. It's one of the most pervasive and enduring concepts in personality, which is a subsection of psychology.
Yeah.
And because it is so commonly used and known about in society and in our culture, a lot of people who may not have studied it use it. However, I have found that a lot of people use it perhaps a little incorrectly. And I'm not being critical, everybody. I'm just saying we just need to brush up, just spit and polish our definitions.
Which are?
So this is actually an energy preference thing. It's not, are you good or bad with people? Yeah, it's about how you use your energy and what gives you versus takes energy. See, I love you.
This is actually news to me.
Yeah. So this is what's so important about this. So let me take a pause and say, if you are like, ooh, I don't get what that is, and I use it all the time, don't worry. We all because we use it incorrectly so often, it's okay if you're thinking, wait a minute, I have not been thinking of it in terms of energy management this whole time. So check, confidence back up. Wonderful. All right, back up. So now that it's back up, extroversion is that you get your energy through other people. So in a meeting, for example, I'm going to invite you to think about what this would be like at school. Okay. Translate this to the student experience in a sec. If you're in a meeting, if you have an extroverted preference, you're probably going to get your best ideas by talking them out loud. You like processing them through people. If you go to a work event, you're likely going to like to meet lots of different people. That gives you energy. In fact, one of your favorite things might be meeting new people. You might love to do that. You love collecting stories. You love, if small talk doesn't feel weird for you, you see that as little micro moments of connection. And you love acquiring interesting facts and stories. And again, you don't have to, it doesn't deplete you, that. Whereas you probably have a more extroverted preference if what I've described to you sounds like awful. Does that sound fun? Yeah.
Yeah, no.
No. What would be a more of a preference for you as opposed to what I just described?
Like smaller friend groups and just like hanging out, like maybe in one of our rooms, not a whole like big restaurant or meeting place. And yeah, like meeting people, but not like everyone. Like I'd be satisfied if I met like 3 new people. I don't know. My goal is not to connect with every single human at the function.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I guess that'd be good for like work and education and stuff, but
that's such a good point about it would be good for. So I want to put a pause on that. Can we come back to it? Because that's such a good point. Yes. So, as you can probably tell, listeners slash viewers, Simonne has more of an introverted preference, and I want to emphasize some of the things she just talked about. And when we have an introverted preference, we likely need time to process our ideas, such as in a meeting or in a academic environment. You're actually, so go ahead.
No, I was just you said like to translate it to education. So
Yes.
like meet it
Mhm.
people in clubs and going to big um like events and
Mhm.
things and being on all those councils and stuff. Yeah, that would seem great for a resume, but like actually doing it, mm, yeah, no, thank you.
If you're listening, you probably could tell Simone's tone of voice changed. And if you're watching, you probably saw her cringe at just the idea of having, as you say, a function.
A
Even the word
function.
function was like
Yeah.
you're allergic to that concept in that word.
Function with talking to humans, bed and watch movie. Function with humans, bed and watch
Which
movie.
one wins?
Yeah, fine. Bed.
Yeah, yeah,
Any day.
yeah. And I'm not, against a good snuggle in bed, but I would find that very boring if that were my default.
Hmm,
Yeah. Yeah.
quite fulfilling.
Yeah. Well, and that's good. That's why it's good to have introverted and extroverted preferences because you do need that whole spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Because as an example of where introversion is a really valuable component, imagine if everybody had an extroverted preference in a meeting, in a function. Everybody would be talking over each other. It would be their ideas. It would be everybody would be needing to process their ideas by making them external.
Mm-hmm.
In people who have an introverted preference, they're super valuable in those meetings, in those functions, because they are processing by listening. They help to sift and sort the collective's contribution. And they're able to generally bring it back forward in this really interesting new way of seeing it. They're able to assimilate and merge together ideas and concepts, maybe see solutions based on multiple perspectives. So I've actually been given feedback with people with an introverted preference that I should not be the first one to speak up at meetings. And yes, always being the first one to speak up in meetings is not ideal. And when that's my preference and other people have an introverted preference, I also feel like part of my function of the group is to help the groups get started.
Mm-hmm.
So some of those folks who gave me that feedback don't have an extroverted preference and they don't realize that that actually can be very helpful. So, and also sometimes I really literally should let other people start the conversation. So I guess the thing is that we need to be aware that this is not extroverted people are people and introverted people are shy people. That's not what we're saying, right, Simonne?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
No, sir.
No, 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 Sarah.
No, senor.
Which one do you think is more accepted and valued and set up for success in work and academics?
Extroverts, 100%.
Yeah,
Like I was
what?
saying, like you could like connect with all these people and you're not in bed watching a movie or talking and connecting with all these people and you have more success because you know more people.
And well, and what gets when you think about your seminar system,
Oh
who finds
yeah,
it easier to meet the expectations?
that's true. That's very true. Definitely extroverts because we get like graded on participation. So like an introvert like me, I always find it hard to get those participation marks because I don't want to talk. I don't know who these people are. We're just like a number to
Mhm.
the humans. I don't really know even know their name. And so it's hard to like talk and say
Mhm.
what I thought about the philosophy book.
Mhm.
Um, but extroverts kind of find it easier because they is it that they like validation or something? I don't know. I mean, I guess
Well,
everyone likes that, but
mhm.
they just find it easier to speak up a lot of the time. Not for every extrovert, but you know.
Well, it certainly is. Those of us with an extroverted preference. Notice I keep using the word preference because you're
Mm-hmm.
not one or the other. You're not only an extrovert, only an introvert. That people are would be too black and white to be
Mm-hmm.
only in one camp or the other. And that's
True.
the other bias, by the way, everyone, is that we often say somebody is an introvert or an extrovert because we can have more introverted and extroverted preference at different times in different situations.
Mm-hmm.
So an example of that, to your point around a seminar system, is you don't feel as when you have an introverted preference, like who are these people? I don't know them. Why would they want to know what I have to say? And so your
Yeah.
extroverts may, people with an extroverted preference may get the conversation started. And by the time you probably feel comfortable about the topic, the seminar's over.
Yeah. It's only like 50 minutes, but
Hmm.
mm-hmm.
And and as the semester has gone on, I think you've gotten more and more comfortable because you now have built some relationships and you kind of
Mm-hmm.
know who who has certain opinions and there's a bit of safety that's built through
Yeah.
knowing the environment. Are you speaking up more now than you were at first?
Yes. Not in philosophy. I still have nothing to say, but
Hmm.
in my other courses, yeah. I'm building like connections, like you were saying, like with friends or even with the TA, and that makes me more comfortable to talk. At the start of the year, they were just like strangers, and I'm like, are you judging me? But everyone was in the same boat. No one
Hmm.
wants to speak up. Even the
Right.
extroverts found it hard at the start, and now
Yeah.
they're all laughing, but
Yeah.
good for them.
Well, in your TA, so teacher's assistants, one of the things that would be really helpful is imagine if we started from that perspective. This is where I think everyone needs to understand psychology. Imagine if you said, listen, we all have different preferences. Some of you will feel more comfortable and actually enjoy the learning experience and learn more by talking and bouncing your ideas or bringing your ideas out into the world through talking about it and sharing it. Some of you will have an introverted preference, and your contribution will be to listening and assimilating ideas and bringing solutions based on what people who have a more extroverted preference say. And
Mhm.
that will likely be more extremes at the beginning of our time together than by the time our course is over. I want you to know everyone is valued. So, why don't you share with me privately, do you feel you have more of an extroverted or introverted preference? And what you need for this to be a sense of a comfortable and safe place for you to learn and grow. Because here's what I'm thinking. I tried to do something like that, but I wasn't quite as aware of this whole thing
Right.
when I was a teacher assistant. But I've certainly done this as a leader and
Mm-hmm.
as a business owner is setting the stage for people to give you feedback about what they need. Because if let's say you had been asked to do that by your TA and you were able to write this is how I learn best or this is how I think I'll be the best contributor, what might you have said? Which by the way, I just did something very typical of people with an extroverted preference is I've now just shared with Simonne what I want her to talk about without telling her in advance. Here's what I should have done, and this is what I'm going to do. Simonne, in a couple of seconds, I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you to think about what if your teacher's assistant had asked you what your preference would be, what you would say. So think about that.
Oh,
Think about that for a second. I'm going to extrovert myself right now. If you can just think about that for a second. So the more you can set the stage for letting people know that there is a continuum, everyone is valued, and be aware that we have certain biases, like when people speak up in meetings, we assume that they have more to say. And we value that more generally than people who need to take time to process it. And we generally don't give people time to who have an introverted preference to think about a question before we jump into expecting them to have an answer, such as what I just did. So being aware of this allows us to have more respectful and inclusive conversations because we are aware of people's energy preferences. Okay. So I'm wondering, Simone, do you have some thoughts as to if your teacher's assistant had asked you what you needed, would you have felt more comfortable? What would have made you feel more comfortable and more successful as a student in the seminars?
wait, are you asking me what my learning style is?
No, I'm asking you, given how your energy is from within and processing, you need
Mm.
time. You don't want to be put on the spot. Like, oh, here's a question.
Like right now.
No, I gave you like a few seconds. That
Yeah.
wasn't enough
I
time.
need minutes. Anyways, what was it? I don't know. What's the question?
Yeah. So the question is, if let's say your teacher's assistant had said, I know that there's a range of energy preferences. Some of you feel very comfortable speaking up,
Mm-hmm.
and actually you will learn better by expressing your ideas. And some of you with a more introverted preference are going to take more time to think about it. And your job is to assimilate, bring together the ideas that people who express them. Some of you will express them easily. Some of you may not find it as easy. Some of you will do your best work by starting the conversation. Some of you will do your best work by assimilating and bringing the ideas together. And everyone's success in this course matters, and you're allowed to show up differently. So what do you need? If they had said that question, if they had start the beginning of the year and they had said, so write me a note before you come back to class, send me an email. How do you need to learn best? What do you need?
Okay.
Okay.
Knowing knowing the questions beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we do in
Mm-hmm.
my psych seminar. That's why I find it a little easier to talk.
Shout out to psychology again. Hero
Mm-hmm,
again.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Knowing the questions in
Um,
advance. Love it.
if something's being like taught in seminar, like sometimes it's taught in seminar, like visually,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm not gonna learn very well by just like hearing a bunch of notes. Like I need them like written down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, just give me time to process the question.
I love it. I love that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's fantastic. Oh, and can I just add to that? The extroverts will feel like this sense of pressure, pressure, pressure. Like it, I have a hard time paying attention in if I can't get it out. Have you ever noticed me do that at the dinner table?
Yeah, you're like ah, ah.
Like I really need to get it out. And then as soon as I get it out, I'm okay. Now I want to listen. You know.
But you're like the world's best non-interrupter,
Oh, so.
so I'm sure she feels that a lot,
Oh,
like a
that's
big
so
bubble.
sweet.
No,
Oh,
I can't with interrupters or when you're talking and they interrupt you and they don't go, "What were you saying?" Like she says that, and I'm like, "Oh, she wants to hear what I'm saying." But then people are like, "Okay, next." I was talking.
yes,
My point is valid.
yes. Thank you, Simone.
Of course, Queen.
I work very hard at not being an obnoxious extroverter. And that is we need to value, and this isn't just the introversion extroversion, making sure that everyone feels that their voice matters
Yeah.
is table stakes for me. So thank you for that was like one of the nicest compliments you could ever give me. And
Mm-hmm.
probably nicest compliments that you listeners would also receive as well, that people feel listened to you and valued and so forth. So I think how I would invite our listeners to think about this, and you've done a great job. Thank you, Simone, for being patient with your extroverted preference mother
Anytime.
to be put on the spot and come up with those ideas. Very,
Anytime.
very good advice for in a school and an academic setting. I will echo your points and say all the same things that Simone suggested in an academic environment is helpful in a work environment too.
Mm-hmm.
Let people know what the agenda is. Don't just have them go in without being aware of it. Um, if you're going to key up a question, maybe say, I think we should talk about, or I'm going to ask you a question of, and then maybe don't put people on the spot right away.
Please.
Yes, please, please. Um, if it's a work event, maybe providing some spaces where people can have smaller group conversations as opposed to it be all kinds of people in this huge big environment that can be very noisy, maybe expect that there's going to be different spaces for people to be able to connect. And from an experience as an educator, somebody who, whether be facilitating a breakout or doing a full day training session, I know that I need to mix up the activities. People doing some reflection, people doing like dyad pair work, people doing a group activity, people listening to me. If I'm going to ask the group a question for them to say it, I just ask, I'm going to say, so when you think about such and such, and I'm going to ask you about in a second about your experience, and then I'll describe it, and then I'll say, so what do you, and then I'll bring it the opportunity for people to talk about it. I try to be very careful. I try to be very careful about not only having the extroverts valued in the world.
Mm-hmm. Facts.
Yeah. I think this was helpful for all of us understanding the introversion-extroversion continuum. And if you're thinking that you're not quite sure about where you fall on the continuum, there are many tools like the Myers-Briggs type inventory. You can gauge pretty quickly what your preference is and all the preference of other members of your team. So maybe check out that personality. It's a personality trait versus a state. It is how you are born. You're born with a preference as opposed to a state, which is something that you can learn and grow over time. So you can learn how to manage your energy and manage in situations outside of what your comfort zone is. However, your actual preference, you will be a lifelong introverted preference. I will be a lifelong extroverted preference. You gave me feedback about how I've really learned and grown about how to manage that. You have been experiencing your crash course of needing to have more comfort of being more in the extroverted world, because it is work and academics leans towards valuing the extroverted preference. So we can learn how to manage our expectations and our energy. But just know you have a particular preference as to others. So learn more about it, get an education about it. Hopefully this has been helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I won't ask you what's your most helpful thing, because that would be putting you on the introverted spot.
Well, the most helpful thing I've been finding in seminars is like pre-planning what you're gonna say. So, like for philosophy, we always ask, what'd you think about the book? And I don't know, I'll just write some one-line answer, but at least I get the check mark beside my name that says I spoke.
Yeah. So I just got goosebumps right now. And then I promise we will wrap up this episode because I know everybody's very busy. You just gave me a light bulb moment. Did you see the light bulb?
I didn't, but I see it in you now. Oh, there.
You see it in my eyes?
Yeah.
Yes. The light bulb moment was, if we do not honor people's introverted preference, they will be able to function around it, but it may not be what you hoped it would be. The goal of those participation marks should not be just so that somebody says something. You're like, if the game is, I'm only valued if I speak up, I guess I'm going to have to play the game. I will find something to say. And that's not necessarily the learning. So you have just, bam, that was a mic drop. That was a mic drop about why this is so important. Because if we're not conscious of the biases we have, people will find a way around the system because they have to, but it may not be the original needs. So thank you, Simonne, for giving that. That was a really helpful.
Anytime.
Helpful? God, you're helpful.
Of course.
I hope you go and learn lots about this important topic. I love you, Simonne. Thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Anytime.
We're greatness together. We're greatness together.
Indeed so.
We are literally greatness together. Peace out. Thanks so much for joining us for the Greatness Together podcast. Never miss an episode. Subscribe wherever you catch your podcasts. Yours in greatness, Simonne and Sarah.